natin yung second question. Tripartite nga yan. The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. We have some breaking news. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana orders the relief of the AFP's Intel Chief Major General Alex Luna. This comes as the Defense Department faced public backlash for the, quote, publication of an erroneous list of alleged NPA killed by the military. In his relief order, Lorenzana said they do not take these offenses lightly and that he wants to hold the people involved accountable. The Food and Drug Administration has approved 2 COVID-19 vaccines for emergency use. This comes after UK's Astrazeneca vaccine was granted an EUA in the country. However, the FDA has set certain conditions for the use of Astrazeneca vaccine. To give us more details, we have Greg Gregorio joining us live from Mandaluyong. Greg, good afternoon. Could you tell us what precisely were these conditions set by the FDA for the use of Astrazeneca in the country?
Good afternoon, Charles. According to Food and Drug Administration, the conditions for the issuance of emergency use authorization for AstraZeneca's vaccine include the reasonable belief that the drug or vaccine may be effective to prevent COVID-19, and its potential benefits must outweigh the known and potential risks, and also that there is no adequate or approved and available alternative other than this COVID-19 vaccine. FDA Director General Eric Domingo said AstraZeneca has met all these conditions so that they were given an approval for their application of emergency use authorization in the country. Charles?
All right, Greg, could you tell us about the efficacy of AstraZeneca and any reported adverse actions?
Charles, according to Director General Eric Domingo, the AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine has at least 70% efficacy rate, and it will increase depending on the length of the interval as to when the second dose will be given. It also showed almost 100% prevention of having a severe infection. Charles?
All right, Greg, is there a particular age limit for those who can be given this AstraZeneca vaccine?
Charles, according to Domingo, this vaccine can be given to 18 years old, to people ages 18 years old and older. And as to the question earlier about the adverse effects, there are no known serious adverse effects recorded so far other than the headache and minimal pain on the area where the injection is made. Charles?
All right, let's compare this with Pfizer's EUA. Were they subject to the same conditions for the use of their particular vaccine brands in the Philippines?
Charles, may you just please repeat the question? I wasn't able to hear it clearly.
All right, let's shift over to Pfizer. Greg, we're talking about Pfizer retaining its EUA in the country. Were they also subject to certain conditions for the use of their vaccine?
Yes, Charles, Pfizer is also given certain conditions as to the observance of safety and as to the insurance of safety and efficacy of its vaccine here in the Philippines. But according to Domingo, there are earlier reports from FDA that there could be a possibility that the age restriction of Pfizer's vaccine may be amended or revised, as there are reports abroad as to the effect of this vaccine to elder people who are aging 65 and above or 80 and above. Charles?
Right, Greg, do we have any updates on the EUA applications of the other brands of vaccines?
Charles, as of the moment, there are 3 pending applications from pending EUA applications from Sinovac, Gamaleya, and Bharat Biotech from India. Now, there is a pending evaluation, meanwhile, for the EUA application of Sinovac and Gamaleya. They have just submitted their clinical trial phase 3 data to the Food and Drug Administration, while the Bharat Biotech has not submitted their clinical trial phase 3 yet. Charles?
All right, Greg, do we have any updates on these clinical trial applications in the Philippines?
Charles, according to Domingo, there are no new applications for the conduct of clinical trials phase 3 in the Philippines. But as of date, there are 3 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers that have been given approval for the conduct of late-stage trials in the Philippines. These are Clover Biopharmaceutical, Sinovac, and Janssen of Johnson & Johnson. According to Domingo, their clinical trial phase 3 can be started as soon as possible, as long as logistical preparations are made. Charles?
All right, the question remains, when will these approved products be available for commercial use eventually, Greg?
Charles, according to Domingo, since an emergency use authorization is the only approval given to Pfizer and Astrazeneca, their vaccines cannot be cannot be sold in the market yet, because EUA authority limits the availability of these vaccines through the program of the national government. They can only be sold to the market if after given approval, or after they are given the certificate of product registration, which usually comes after the full study of the clinical trial phase 3. Charles?
Thank you, Greg Gregorio, reporting live from Mandaluyong. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Philippine economy is still in recession as GDP once again fell in the fourth quarter. That brings the country's full-year growth in 2020 to a record low. Shaila Francisco joins us live from Makati for more details. Shaila, which sectors dragged the economy the most last year?
Charles, all 3 major sectors, agriculture, industry, and services, pulled down economic growth for 2020. And this is all still because of the restrictions brought about by COVID-19. For the fourth quarter of 2020, Philippine economy declined by 8.3%, a slight improvement from previous quarter's data. However, it was not enough to shore up economic growth for the full year of 2020. Last year's GDP came in at a negative 9.5%, the lowest on record since Philippine Statistics Authority recorded data in 1946. This is also the first time the annual GDP declined since 1998. In terms of industry, accommodation and food services, construction, transportation, and storage posted the most contraction. Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Carl Chua said, although the government relaxed restrictions by allowing more public transport and establishments to operate, restrictions on the demand side made recovery more difficult. Private consumption makes up around 70% of the country's GDP, but restrictions on the mobility of children and families prevented consumption from making a stronger comeback. Quarantine restrictions also reduced household spending by 801 billion pesos in 2020. Overall, the restriction and the fall in consumption translated to an income loss average of 23,000 pesos per worker for the year. Chua admits balancing COVID and non-COVID concerns is the most difficult policy decision, but he knows that gradually opening the economy, avoiding prolonged quarantine periods, and can give us a better print in the next quarters. Charles, economic managers are hopeful that the country will go back to its pre-pandemic levels by mid-2022. They are banking on the mass vaccination program to shore up or to push the economy. For this year, they are targeting 6.5 to 7.5% growth and 8 to 10% in 2022. Charles?
Right, Shyla, numbers not very good, but then were there any industries that actually went ahead and bucked the downtrend and posted some growth?
Charles, there were actually some industries, including the finance sector, the information and communication, and public admin and defense. But as you can see, these were all not enough to shore up the economy due to the contraction in most parts of the sectors. Charles?
Thank you, Shyla. Francisco, reporting to us live from the city of Makati. The United States has pledged to stand with Southeast Asian nations in the face of, quote, pressure from mainland China. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken reportedly called Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Locsin to discuss the possible repercussions of Beijing's new Coast Guard law. Blinken told the DFA chief that the U.S. rejects China's maritime claims in the South China Sea beyond what it is permitted under international law. In the past, China has shown little regard for the arbitral ruling granting the Philippines jurisdiction over disputed territories in the South China Sea. To enforce this ruling in the face of China's new Coast Guard law, Blinken stressed the importance of the Philippines' mutual defense treaty with the U.S. However, Blinken has yet to provide specific details on how this treaty can help the Philippines withstand territorial pressure from China.
Not as addicted to fossil fuels as you think. There's a number that many throw around. They say 80% of the world's energy comes from fossil fuels. We're addicted to these sources of energy, they say, and we won't be able to wean ourselves off them easily. The number is correct, but the interpretation? Maybe not. Much of the energy from fossil fuels is simply lost as waste heat and noise. As Shakespeare would put it, just sound and fury signifying nothing. For example, electric cars travel 3 times further than gasoline-powered cars for the same amount of energy they consume. Crazy, right? Fossil fuel cars waste a lot of energy as heat. There are even drivers who can cook a good meal using the waste heat of an internal combustion engine. Much of that waste is inevitable. Burning fossil fuels can never be 100% efficient. But the world cares about doing things with energy, not the waste. Experts find that even though fossil fuels generate 80% of the world's primary energy, they produce only 60% of its useful energy. Why should we care about these dry matters of how energy wonks measure things? Because misunderstanding these numbers dramatically overplays how difficult it will be to meet global clean energy goals. Solar and wind do not need to replace the waste heat produced in a coal or gas power plant. So clean energy sources have to produce only a fraction of the total energy that comes from fossil fuels to do the same amount of useful work. For example, coal burned today to generate electricity makes up 15% of the world's primary energy. But it only produces 5% of useful energy. Thus, solar and wind only need to replace the 5% and not the 15%. So next time you hear someone say that humanity is addicted to fossil fuels, which provide 80% of our energy, you'll know what to tell them. Overcoming this addiction is going to be easier than our outdated numbers make it seem. This is Net Zero. I'm Akshat Rathi. Follow us on QuickTake and Bloomberg.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join Sean Yao later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lehano. We are One News.